I had one and only one question in mind that I wanted to answer going into today's flight to Hong Kong. After a very tumultuous 10 or so years, is Cathay Pacific back? The answer is yes, and given the roller coaster that they've been on, some of it self-inflicted, some definitely not, looking back, I think it's pretty impressive how they've built back, since for a while they were hanging on by a thread. By the way, the price that I paid for this and every flight that I take is always in the description. Let me welcome any of you that might be new to the channel. My name is Kevin. I'm here to give you a self-funded and honest look at some of the best and some of the not so best airlines and hotels in the world, which I've been bringing to you full-time for the past 4 years. Check out my hundreds of videos, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description to learn more about how I do things. Let's get to the airport. This was a very anticipated flight for me, partly because I wanted to see how Cathay was doing, but also because when I booked this itinerary a year in advance, let's just say that things weren't exactly peachy keen yet. Luckily, over that year from when I booked it until when I flew, Cathay seems to have gotten some of their mojo back and settled into a niche of airlines I think we can call upper premium. I don't say this in a negative way, but I don't think that Cathay is trying to currently be the best airline on earth. That's a perch that's really hard to get to and even harder to maintain. I personally think they'd rather be something like an upper premium carrier. One that is certainly better than most, but still accessible across the board, and efficient in its operation. Cathay uses Terminal 8 here at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. This is the American Airlines home at JFK, which also now hosts all of British Airways operations, along with, I believe now, all oneworld carriers. A few months ago, I published a review on American Airlines, and the title of that thumbnail was America's Gray Airline, and Terminal 8 certainly reinforces that. Cathay currently has 2 to 3 daily flights from JFK, down from its pre-COVID 4 dailies, not counting their former flight to Newark as well. That said, they are slowly but surely ramping capacity back up in and around the US, recently announcing service to Dallas. After you pass through security, the 3 oneworld lounges are above you, well 3 of them. With a oneworld business class ticket, you'll have access to the Greenwich lounge, the largest and lowest ranking of the 3. But low rank or not, it's still a reliably nice lounge. Cathay Pacific emerged as an idea from its primary founders, Australian Sydney H. DeCantzaw and American Roy C. Farrell in 1946. Their original operations took off while based in Shanghai, and the name was meant to symbolize where they were and where they hoped to go. Cathay is known to be an ancient name for China, and Pacific for their aspirations to fly across it. The name also scratched the itch of not using the word China in the airline name, as was rumored to be one of the key points. After some finicky issues, I speak quite vaguely about things in this part of the world, they moved their operations to Hong Kong, where eventually the aviation authorities gave them access to all points south of Hong Kong, while their competitor, Hong Kong Airways, had all points north. The Korean War, and some other things, led to Hong Kong Airways' demise, and Cathay bought them up. From the 90s until the early 2010s, they were defined by their acquisitions of Dragonair and Air Hong Kong, and their desire to become a truly world-class airline. Competition from mainland carriers gaining market share to and from North America and Europe eroded this plan though, and by 2016, they were in a tough place. 2 years later, they began to turn things around, only to be hit with the Hong Kong protest in 2019, and then, of course, COVID. If you're enjoying the video and would like to support the channel, there are many ways that you can do so. A quick like on the video and subscribe helps videos with the algorithm. You could join my YouTube channel memberships to get early access to some videos and access to all of my community posts. Or you could check out my Patreon, where I post the most and can help you out with any travel-related questions. Whatever you do, thanks for doing it. While, of course, most carriers across the globe suffered during COVID, I don't know of any that ended up downsizing their operations for an extended period as much as Cathay did, besides, of course, the ones that went bankrupt. This led to a rehiring spree around 2023, which meant that staffing at the airline was a little shaky for some years. But Cathay is clearly re-emerging. Let's get on board and we can see how. At the time of booking this flight, it was meant to be operated by an A350, but as Cathay began reintroducing their first-class product on the route, it reverted back to a 777 service for their daytime flight. These interiors have been around since the early 2010s. They were one of the first airlines on Earth to offer the now ubiquitous reverse herringbone seats, and their cabins are still in impeccable condition. Some of the finishes might start looking a bit dated, but the upkeep is top-notch. They're not in such great condition because they're going to be around forever though. Cathay has recently introduced a new, very similar, seat that they're labeling as ARIA suites, which they've installed on their 777s, with refurbishments for some A330s to follow. This is a really big cabin. There's a total of 53 business class seats. 2 rows of that are in front of door number 2 in a mini cabin behind first. The remainder are spread across 12 rows in the cabin where I am now. While the seats don't have doors, this seat debuted long before that was ever a thing. The wing on the seat shell does give you just enough privacy so you don't feel like you're sitting in a giant cabin. There's also a small storage area under your armrest, which without fail, I always forget exists. The seat has older generation IFE and a couple sockets many of you won't know how to use. But besides that, it has all the features that you'd need and expect, and among all reverse herringbone seats out there, Cathay's on the 777s are, I think, one of the more spacious ones. With a sizable footrest, no monitor to block your knees, and an armrest that goes fully flat. If only there were overhead vents, I'd be an entirely happy camper. Pre-departure drinks and hot towels were passed around during boarding, and soon after, the safety video began. Just after pushing back, crew came around and introduced themselves specifically to all One World Sapphire and Emerald passengers on board, and took their orders for the first meal just prior to takeoff. Okay, before we get to the first meal service, let's take a look at some of the seat comforts on board. First up, we have the pillow, which is a decent size and pleasantly springy, with the logo of their bedding and amenity partner, Bamford. Then we have this massive block, which is probably bigger than a regulation carry-on. Inside, we have the duvet-style blanket, which was top quality and soft, but more of a crinkly type of soft than plush kind, which I personally like. And inside there was also a mattress cover, which we'll see in a little while. Finally, for now, a decent pair of slippers, one thing you can always, without exception, count on in East Asia. Here's the full menu and wine list for the flight. Note that the red prices on the wine list are my addition to the graphic, just to give you an idea of how much they might cost on the ground. Of course, everything to consume on board is free. As a side note, I would also just add that I think that the stitching that Cathay always does on the menus is one of the classiest touches that any airline does in any cabin. The service started around 40 minutes after takeoff with drinks and an incredibly delicious smoked salmon amuse-bouche. I generally just pass over the airline amuses since they're rarely all that good, but I could have had a full meal out of this, 9 out of 10. Next up was one of the best chilled appetizers that I've ever had. It was burrata with caramelized peach, arugula, and toasted granola. That rich creaminess with the pepperiness from the arugula and the sweetness from the peaches was near sublime, 10 out of 10. For the main dish, I had the braised beef short ribs served with polenta and roasted vegetables. A large portion that really hit the spot. The beef was more sliceable than fall apart, but still tender enough. And along with that very creamy polenta was delicious, 8.7 out of 10. For the primary meal, Cathay deploys the trusty cart service for dessert, which I love. I opted for the cheese plate, hold the blue, and ice cream, along with a bit of port, to wrap up what I thought was a very streamlined but impressive meal service. Let me explain a bit about my earlier comment about upper premium versus one of the best. One small detail that I think demonstrates this is the tray service. I love tray services when done well, I see nothing wrong with them. But I do think it gives an indication of the direction that they're taking their catering and experience on board. A beautiful sunset began as we continued flying due north. This would be my first transpolar route in quite a long time, and the first time flying over Russia in just as long. Cathay was the first airline to fly the route. In 1998, when the old Kai Tak airport closed, the final flight was Cathay to London. The very next day, the first ever non-stop transpolar route from New York to Hong Kong landed at the new airport. Entertainment on board is good, with a nice selection of movies, and if those aren't enough, you'll also have free Wi-Fi in business class. The bandwidth is limited, but it's certainly better than those messaging-only plans. Though on this route, service does go in and out a lot, with the North Pole not really being a global tech hub. There are 3 reasons that I love the full flatbed on Cathay for long flights. First up, the blanket is more than long enough to cover you from tip to toe. Secondly, the design of the seat makes for a wide sleeping surface, and for a reverse herringbone seat, a very wide foot space considering this is not the bulkhead. Lastly, I always love a good mattress cover, especially when they're full length. When it comes to flying and time zones and jet lag, as I've posted before in my jet lag guide on Patreon, I am not about changing clocks as soon as you get on board or forcing yourself to sleep at certain times and stay awake at others. I personally think flying is hard enough on your body without you trying to manipulate your sleep cycle from 40,000 feet. So my rule of thumb is sleep when you're tired, eat when you're hungry, drink crazy amounts of water. I think the stress of impending jet lag contributes to jet lag, so I just go with the flow. And that flow today included fishball noodle soup and caramel popcorn. The soup was exactly what I needed with super springy balls, and the popcorn was a nice indulgent treat. A full 3 hours before arrival, which generally is a little bit excessive, but on a very long flight like this, perhaps forgivable, the pre-arrival service began with a hot towel, so let's get ready for that. The bathrooms on board are stocked with their Bamford products and kept in immaculate condition, the crew often checking for cleanliness in between every customer. The Bamford amenity kit also gets the job done nicely. I know I always appreciate a pair of slippers on board, but does anyone actually use or need the socks? Wouldn't you just prefer your own? So, I don't see the omission as a problem. The breakfast selection on offer was comprehensive and clever. You had the choice between 5 options: the wellness breakfast, which was essentially muesli, pastries, and fruit; the lighter breakfast, which was fruit, pastries, and an English muffin breakfast sandwich; the Chinese breakfast, which was fruit, congee, and fried noodles; or the Western breakfast, which was fruit, warm pastries, with a zucchini and ciabatta frittata with cheddar sauce, English pork sausage, and cherry tomatoes. The last option was just an express breakfast, a pastry and coffee served right before landing. You know that I think a frittata is generally the best egg in the sky. So this frittata, with the cheddar sauce, which was actually kind of like a hollandaise sauce, was just about as good as it gets, considering I'm never going to get true Eggs Benedict in the sky. Not anytime soon, at least. Overall, this breakfast came in at a 9.8 out of 10. After that, I had nearly 2 hours left until landing, and we had time to watch another sunset, which was a little bit odd having just finished breakfast. Service on board was fantastic. The crew, especially those serving my aisle, were very attentive and damn near bubbly by Hong Kong standards. I've had a few hiccups with Cathay in previous videos, but I always did think that those were growing pains or regrowing pains. And so today I'm happy to bring them up to an 8, which does feel right for what they are now on their journey back to their old self. Enjoy the landing. Since I really wanted to take the day flight out of JFK, that meant that I had a 13-hour layover here in Hong Kong. So I spent the night at the Regal Airport Hotel, which may be a bit overpriced at times, but can't be beat for its convenience and really nicely equipped rooms. So I really do hope that you enjoyed this flight with me today. If you did, please be sure to click that like button and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss my weekly flight and resort reviews. I'll see you next time from right here, along with a big apology. As always, thanks for watching until the end.